Good morning, 4th grade. Today, after you finished up your color wheel assignment, you are going to start working on your painting. I know some of us have already started one of these things, but we're going to go through it all from scratch again just because I know that I'm not here and you have a guest teacher, and it'll help us all be on the same page. So, here's what you need to get started. You will need a piece of watercolor paper turned this direction, and those come out of this thing that our guest teacher will provide you with. You also need one water container per table. Each one of you needs a watercolor paint tray, a watercolor brush, it's the nice fluffy brown tipped one, and your own paper towel. You are also going to have to choose a Sharpie from that bright green basket over there by sink number 1. You can use a black one or a colored one. Very first thing we're going to do after we put our name on the back is draw a line. Doesn't even have to be a straight line, somewhere in the middle. We're going to use what's called a wet into wet paint technique. So on the bottom of that line, use your brush and put down water first. We don't want that water to dry or soak all the way in. And while that water is on our paper, we are going to use the cool colors, so green, blue, and purple. And we can use them in any combination we want. We're going to add those cool colors to the bottom. If you've ever looked around the supply closet, you probably noticed that I have a lot of hair dryers, and they're not actually for drying our hair or my hair, they're to dry paint projects. So we have enough room in here for 3 people to use these in the closet, or if our guest teacher would rather, we can use them in the classroom. Just make sure that over here, when you go to turn it on, you pull this black knob down, so it sounds like this. Otherwise, if you push it up, it's going to be louder, and it sounds like this. Now it's time to add some more paint to the top of that paper. Before you set your painting down to keep working on it, might be a good idea to dry up any extra paint just so it doesn't end up on your paper. Because now we are going to do the same process all over again, but this time up here we are going to use warm colors, so yellow, orange, and red. Let's go! My painting is dry, but I'm also done using this stuff for now, so I'm going to put my paint tray back over by sink number 3. Carry that thing flat because that's got a bunch of wet paint in there, and if you turn it sideways like that, it's probably going to leak all over your clothes and shoes and ruin them. Brushes get washed, and oh yeah, they also get dried using a paper towel. Now it's time to switch brushes because we're also going to switch to paint. That's a little bit different than watercolor, and we're going to be using some black temper paint. So choose a brush from one of these 2 containers over here, and I wouldn't choose the biggest, but I also wouldn't choose the smallest. I'm going to go with the medium-sized brush. Just like we usually do, we are going to share our paint tray with the table we sit at, and since we only need black, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And you're going to paint a tree in the middle, just one tree, and the catch is it has to have branches and it has to go in between both the top and the bottom part of your painting. I'm going to paint what's called a banyan tree, and it's very similar to the one that I showed you. Banyan trees typically grow in warmer locations, but they're awesome because they have all of those roots that kind of hang down from the tree and into the water or into moist ground. This type of paint is opaque, which is just a fancy art way of saying you can't really see through it. It's going to cover pretty much anything. So make sure you don't actually paint over your name, eh? Lots of branches. Make lots of branches. You might be wondering, Mr. Brady, should I make lots of branches? And the answer would be yes. My tempera paint is going to need some time to dry. I'm going to wash this paintbrush, I'm going to dry this paintbrush, and then I'm going to put it away. Once your black tempera paint is dry, you need to choose 2 or 3 different colors of Sharpies, and you are going to begin making patterns in that negative space. That negative space is the space in between your branches. I say 2 or 3 because I don't have enough for everybody to choose 18 different colors, and as you use those 3 and finish up with them, go ahead and swap them out for another 3. The patterning you choose is up to you. Just make sure that it is a pattern, kind of like this one is yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow. Kind of bled a little bit so it looks orange. So one last thing before you head to your tables today, here's what your project needs. You do need to make sure you're using that wet into wet technique. Your tree also needs to have at least 12 negative spaces, and those negative spaces are the spots in between the branches. You also need a black tempera painted tree on there, obviously, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to paint anything in. So make sure your name is on your project at the end of class and it's in the drying rack. Don't forget to wear your mask anytime you're in this room. And to answer your question, yes, you are going to get some new seats. Our guest teacher has the brand new seating chart. So please make sure when she tells you where you're sitting, you find a spot at that table to sit, and I will see you next time.